Hi, I really appreciated your talk, and I'm 26 years old, and I'm part of an amazing group of youth activists that my whole generation has kind of latched onto this environmental movement and the issue of climate change. And I'm not sure how many of you were aware in October, 150 climate change activists disrupted questioning period in the House of Commons.
Yes.
And I was incredibly disappointed by the treatment of these young people by the media. There was sensationalism. All they could talk about was whether Jay faked blood on his face or not. And we were actually brushed off as immature in some of the comments. And I'm just wondering, how can we respond to this? How can we garner the support we need from people in other generations? And how do we reclaim our story?
Thank you. If you have a question, could you raise your hand? And we have a couple people with microphones. All that talking and no more questions? Okay, over there.
Yeah. I have things to ask, but I'm afraid, you know.
I'm an elementary school teacher. I have many colleagues who are completely oblivious to all of these issues. Our work is to help shape the next generation. I don't feel very hopeful because I don't have many colleagues who give a shit.
Right, DATA news.
Okay, and then right there was a question.
Yeah, that's right.
I'd like to answer the First Lady's question, if I may. I'd like to say that the younger generation should be more proactive and mix with the older generations and not try to create a generational gap.
Okay. Well, you know, weren't we from the generation that said don't trust anybody over 30? I actually find the young generation very willing to mix and very willing to work with the older generation. The problem is with the older generation, okay? Like, you know, that whole thing around climate change on the 24th, I'm sorry I didn't mention the direct action in Parliament, as well as the global action, as well as there's the demonstrations across the country. It's all organized by young people. There's a huge conference in Ottawa called Power Up that young people, like young university-age people, organize for high school kids, right? They're doing amazing work. There's some young Indigenous activists who are mind-blowing, you know, like Ben Powlis and Jessica Yee and Thomas, I always want to call him David Clayton Thomas, but his name is Clayton Thomas Mueller. And, you know, they're doing amazing organizing, and it's up to us to support them. When anybody's out in the front, it's up to those of us who are, you know, in a little safer positions to support them and organize support for them. So that's, I want to say that loud and clear. I think young people are doing amazing work. But like I said, and when I say doing incredibly, like for example on the tar sands, you know, the Indigenous environmental movement went to Greenpeace last year and said, if you're going to work in the tar sands, you've got to work with us and you've got to listen to us and not just come in and take over all the work that we've done. And Greenpeace listened to that. And the two organizers they have here, one of them is an Indigenous woman, and she's not a token. She's part of the Indigenous Environmental Network, which is a North American, really powerful, effective network of Indigenous people that Clayton is part of. And the other one's not. And their division of labor has been amazing. So it's the Greenpeace activists that do the direct action on the tar sand, and the Indigenous people going over to Britain building support in Europe. Because the Indigenous people get killed if they did that. Right? So they're using their white skin privilege to do the direct action, and the Indigenous people are doing the education work because they have more impact in Europe, right? It's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's mostly young people organizing that. So, but you know, where the missing link is I think what Sam was saying, and what some of the other speakers, which is the political education That, when I first became an activist and I was frustrated as a young person, I was frustrated with the limits of my activism. There was all kinds of places I could go. Mind you, a lot of them are organized by far left groups and so on, where I could discuss politics. That's how I became a Marxist. That's how I understood strategy, the long term. I think if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't be active all this time. And those spaces to debate and discuss strategies and to look at what previous movements have done and assess what was strong, what was weak, to look internationally, that's not available to young people today the way it was available to me when I was young. And I think we have to think about that. And also have that intergenerational dialogue. Like, like for example, I mean, there's, I love what the conference was, but somebody who's organizing online should have been here to talk about this online movement, which is mostly young people, which is incredible, and most of us don't know anything about it. So having that kind of intergenerational dialogue, which isn't just old people talking to the young people, but listening to the young people, because they grew up under neoliberalism, and in many ways they understand a lot more about it than we do. I mean, that was why Naomi Klein's book was so powerful, right? Because she came out of her own experience of neoliberalism. In terms of what you can do, I used to have a mantra when I was in the abortion movement, or and I used to get shit on all the time publicly. Not that I don't now, but I used to when I first did. I used to have this mantra, which was, if you move, you're a target, which makes you realize that if you have an impact, they're going to attack you. That's just the way it works, right? There's nothing you can do about that except build solidarity and have lots of people saying other things. The problem now is we have such a monolithic media that for anybody in the media to step out of line and to say, geez, I think that was a good protest. And there was somebody who did, like somebody in the Globe who said they thought it was a good protest and it was crap with the attacks. It's very hard. It's hard. I'm not excusing them, but you really have to be willing to risk your career to be seen as a maverick to do it, in the media, in the mainstream media. But I saw lots of online support. I saw lots of local support. So that's the way it's going to be for a while anyway. And I think that they weren't able to turn these people into criminals. That didn't work. I don't think it worked. That's I was looking from the outside. And I think that the people who did that were brilliant in the way they talked to the media about it. I thought they did a really good job. So I think you did great on that. There was another question. The thing. Yeah, I mean, we're in a time when, activism is a very tiny part of the population, and most people are just struggling to survive. And they've been educated to take care of, number one, themselves and their families. And that's not going to change until there's social movements that make it change. That's what changes it. It's like the women's movement. There were individual, when I did my book, 10,000 Roses, and by the way, I promised, I got her to stay till after, I told her I'd sell the book, so be sure to go out and buy Transforming Power and I'll sign it, because I got her to stay till after the session. And then I forgot to sell the book while I was talking. So anyway, there were a lot of individual women who were very frustrated, but it wasn't until they heard, I had so many women said to me, older women said to me, I heard this woman talk on the radio. I didn't know anybody was thinking like me, right? And that notion that there's other people, or there's people who are actually having an impact in changing things, that's what changes things. So I talked about the food movement. Well, the food movement is something that got a lot of people who were like you were talking, not interested in anything, but they're interested in having healthy food for their kids, Or another example was, my niece called me to tell me she was going to a rally in her neighborhood, and I went, oh my God, somebody in my family is going to a rally, I'm there. And it was about a train that they're going to go through the neighborhood that's working on diesel, not, and they want it to be an electric train, which seems eminently sensible, but they can't get it because it's all about profit and it's cheaper to run diesel. Well, there's all these middle-class people in that neighborhood who are mobilizing and organizing and realizing how screwed up the economic system is, that their kids are going to have 10 times more asthma than they should have because there's diesel trains running through their neighborhood so somebody can make a buck. That's really screwed up, And you don't have to be a radical to see that, right? So more and more, as the movements grow and are better at talking to people, then your colleagues will change. They will change. The better of them will change. because they'll see, and hopefully the kids will help them to change, because that's something that's really happening now. I mean, you know, high school kids are radicalizing around environmental issues. It'll go to primary school kids because they're so smart now. And so I think it'll change. But I understand you feel discouraged because it's your workplace. You know, but I think that there are people organizing for change, and Canada's really behind. There's no question Canada's behind. Partly because we succeeded so much against free trade. But Canada's behind, and it's going to take, we are starting to catch up, but it's going to take us a while. So, and of course you're also here in this province, which is a very conservative place. I mean, it really is, right? So I'm amazed that so many people come out all the time and are actively, I mean, I'm always inspired when I come to Alberta, because I figured you guys would have given up by now.
Okay, well, we're running out of time, so we'll maybe just do one more round of questions. Okay, I've got one here. And whoa. And then we'll take some over there, maybe right there. But we'll start here.
I guess women have to be invited to speak. They don't assume that they're invited.
So, Judy, I know you're really big on starting the movement from bottom up. We are postal workers here, and we would love to get some kind of a tip from you as to how we could start something going on the work floor, because the workers are always looking to the union to do something for them. But how can we get them involved, for them to understand that they are part of the union, that they are the ones who will actually make the change and not just the few executive members of the local?
Hi Judy, thanks so much for your talk. That was really awesome. My question is, if you want to, would you briefly touch on the 2010 Vancouver Olympics?
Okay, who else had a question? Yeah.
Hi, I'm a young feminist. I'm on a radio show on CJSR called Adamant Eve. Listen Fridays at 5:30. I was really interested when you talked about the co-option of the women's movement, and I was wondering if you could talk about how we can fight that and what lessons other movements can learn to prevent a similar co-option.
Okay, who else had their hand up? Okay, and I should also say that I keep using the word question, but I like to encourage discussion, so if you have comments as well, that's fine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I think we're going to go there and then here.
I feel so happy about what you said in the last hour, because you put meat on the bones. That's what I needed. And from the bottom of my heart, I will say, I have, in all my protesting, I have learned the best and the most from the young people. And I think you explained it very well when you talked about that there should be actually, between whatever age you are, it shouldn't make any difference. But I heard an earlier question, I want to speak out against that. I felt so at home when we had the anti-Bill 11 movement, and my best friends were the ones who had no gray hair, and I never thought about that. So that had to come first. And you don't seem to get any older, so you must be maybe on nice drugs that I don't know. But what I like, I just wanted to quickly say, you went all over the map, and you did it so well. You mentioned Cuba. Why can we not borrow some of their programs? I became very humble when I was, for once in my life, in Cuba, and I was on a mission to deliver medical supplies. I learned so much from the people in the street and from the people who were driving the taxis we were renting. And I realized that those people could not really speak out the way we are. I feel sometimes lazy, and now I know again that after you speak today and after having heard all this, I will never feel lazy again. Because the people in Cuba had the courage to speak with me. And sometimes I would say to them, can I phone Raul about this? And they said, oh, senora, no, shut up now. And in this province, we can do that. In this country, crazy country, in this crazy province, we can speak out, we can do a lot more. And what does radical really mean? I've read a lot of Marxism, but I also liked it, what you said. It's really being pragmatic, going back to the roots, carrots or whatever it is, go back to it. And what you also pointed out was not just Marx, it's Buddha, it's other religions. We have to have a kind of a global consciousness that is very spiritual and totally radical. So you helped me to get over this weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to go to the last question or comment right here.
Okay, I just wanted to make a quick comment. You touched base a little bit on like alternative media and things like that. And as a member of sort of alternative media and internet broadcasting, me and my camera guy here, Dom, we've sort of been wandering around with this camera and going to certain protests, like the nuclear power protests and the rodeo last weekend. And I kind of wanted to make a point of that we haven't really seen any mainstream media at this event. We did run into some mainstream media at the rodeo last weekend. There was, 5 or 6 crews there. The nuclear power protest a couple weeks ago, again, no mainstream media coverage. I just, I want to make an extreme point that the internet, it's free, you can broadcast anything. Also, I wanted to touch base a little bit, sorry, I'm a little scattered right now. Sorry, you made a point about, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, anyways, there's, it's needed. Young people have voices and cameras and even cell phones. Whenever you think that there's something happening that might be relevant, just broadcast it. It's there, you can do it.
I think it's genes, I'm sorry to say. Why I still look young, but thank you. And it's also, like, the other thing is, like, it's being active all the time, like, being active keeps you young. It does, it keeps you young, because I'm always working with young people. I was at a conference in Winnipeg, the Waffle. It was 40th anniversary of the Waffle, which was, does everybody know what the Waffle is?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So it was a youth group in the NDP, and I looked around and there were people older than me there. Like almost everybody was older than me. It was such a amazing experience. I was like the youngest one, I wasn't the youngest one, but anyway. So I'm usually with young people, so being with young people keeps you young, and being active keeps you young. So maybe that's how we should sell activism. And it's free too. But thank you, because I remember you from the Medicare days. In fact, when you spoke yesterday, I said, that's the woman who was such an amazing organizer in for Bill 11 and around Medicare. I remember you from those days. So good, I'm glad you're getting re-engaged, because you're a great organizer. In terms of media, I'm glad you raised that question. As you know, I started Rabble.ca, and I also teach media. And one of the interesting things that's happened is that it's not the alternative media that have actually challenged mainstream media, but it's the social media. It's the Facebook, the Twitter, all the ways that young people are publishing and writing. And Don Tapscott, who's somewhat of a, well, anyway, we won't say what he is, but and this is an example of where I had sort of written off Don Tapscott. He's an old comrade of mine, but he wrote a book now called Grown Up Digital. And it's about, he took the money, some of the money he's made, and did a research of people under 20, I think it's under 21, or might be under 25, and how activist they are in terms of they don't want to just write, they don't want to just read, they want to write, they don't want to just watch video, they want to make video. That they're very engaged, they're very progressive, and it all comes from, producing on the net, right? And so that way in which I think young people are connecting on social media. I know there's problems with objectification, all that. I mean, it also has problems, but they're doing it to connect in a society where there's no more community, right? And so they're creating their own communities, whether it's communities of interest, and there's amazing communities of interest on the internet, or whether it's stuff like Facebook and Twitter and so on. And, you know, I'm very into all that stuff, and I understand it. Like, I feel it too, you know, if I'm home, sick, alone, I have a real comfort by talking on Facebook to people. I really do. I get it, you know. And so it took me a while, but, you know, I realize it now. And so I think that that challenge to mainstream media, that of citizen journalism, of social media, it's really forcing them, plus the economic crisis, really forcing them to re-examine what they're doing. Whether that will open space for more debate and ideas, I don't know. But I think we're going to have to get used to the fact that you know, when I was doing NAC or the abortion struggle, we had a lot of access to mainstream media in those days, and they shut it down. I mean, that was a conscious, I don't believe in conspiracy theories, but I was actually on a panel when I was a journalist with Peter Mansbridge and Peter, you know, the one who did Morningside, Zowski. And Peter Mansbridge said, well, we decided after Charlottetown that these so-called spokespeople didn't have any credibility. And I said, any credibility with who? You know, like they just defeated the MAI. I said, Maud Barlow, if that's what you're talking about, has credibility all over the world. I mean, she, you know, this was before she got appointed. And Peter Mansbridge, well, I didn't mean that it was a decision. And Peter Zosky had nothing to lose anymore because he was retiring. He said, yes, it was a decision. We discussed it, and we decided to stop talking to spokespeople from social movements. They actually made the decision on the CBC because they feel they gave us too much power. That was Mulroney's line. You gave them too much power, and that's why Charlottetown was defeated. So, and ever since then, and I'm not saying it's just here because it's happened everywhere, but when I started teaching media in 2002, I could say, well, the Canadian media is different than the American media. I can't say that anymore. Because the CBC is really, with the exception of The Current and Fifth Estate and Marketplace, it's not really very different anymore. So, I agree with you that, yes, we should be accessing all those ways of getting the word out about this conference or other thing. Like, for example, when we occupied the Israeli consulate, it was Jewish women who occupied the Israeli consulate after the Gaza attack. We only got no media in Canada, very little media, only CBC Radio reported it. But we got international media, but more important, we put a video up on YouTube, and that video, and also Al Jazeera covered it, right? And that video went all over the world and had a huge impact. Like, I was getting emails from Palestinians and Jews all over the world. And Al Jazeera reported it, and this is what they said. They said, the first action against the attack on Gaza didn't come from Muslims. It came from Jews in Toronto. Yeah. And so my Palestinians, I have a friend from Palestine who I met in Montreal at the Quebec Social Forum, and he said, he didn't know that I was one of the women. And he said, you know, Judy, you think you did a little thing, but 10 million Arabs thought, so it's not the Jews who are our enemy, it's the state of Israel, right? And he said, you don't know how important that was to undermine the hatred, right? So that it doesn't be hatred against Jews. And so you never know, right, when something's going to go viral or, you know, and have a huge impact. But you know, the mainstream media is still a barrier. It's still a barrier, right? So we have to keep trying to challenge them and attack them and so on. I mean, and try and get them to change. But I agree with you that we should be using, I'm glad to see that this is being taped and videoed and everything else, because it's so easy to spread, like what we've learned, those of us that are here have learned so much, I think, I certainly have, in this day and a half. And we can share that information with others, not just by telling them, but by sending them the URL to the video if they want to do it, or to the audio if they'd rather do that. And that's really, really important since we don't have the method of the mainstream media anymore. So thanks for raising that. Thank you very much.